Well, hello, this is Peter Combs from Bidamount.com and P.O. Combs Asian Art in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and today is October 7th, 2020, and as I mentioned in last week's video, we were going to do one this week on the upcoming sales over in Hong Kong. In particular, we're going to focus on two auctions that are going to take place at Sotheby's. This time around, Sotheby's has gotten the lion's share of the great rarities, the really interesting pieces. Christie's has two good sales as well. They have their annual pavilion sale, and they have a sale of very, very good snuff bottles. It's actually a great snuff bottle collection. The snuff bottles I liked a great deal, and if you're a collector, you want to check it out. And if you're familiar with the Bidamount.com site and you want to come over and you haven't quite figured out where the auction catalogs are yet, you come over to Bidamount.com, scroll down the page to this black box. Look for the black box. This is stuff that we linked off the homepage that are on our site that we think will be useful. And at the top is the free auction catalogs and books. And if you click over to it, you're going to find 583 past auction catalogs and some references and some other good books on here as well that we have stored here forever. And in the top row are the most recent catalogs that we've posted in the most recent past. If you scroll down the page, you obviously get catalogs that were put up years ago. All right. And the other thing I wanted to mention also, if you use the page, just as a quick aside, we've added in the last week to the auction results pages. If you use these links, a lot of people use them often because they show you how things did. We've Chinese works of art auction results and so forth has been there for a while, but just in the last few days, we've added the Japanese and Korean art to the page. All right, so you can look up Japanese art auction results and Korean auction results, which there seems to be increasing interest in those results, so we're going to start keeping that updated for everybody to use. Alrighty, now here is the Christie's sale with the famous pink 6-inch tall Famille Rose moon flask on it. This flask sold just about 2 years ago at Christie's, and it's up again for some reason. I don't know why. It could be some financial thing. Who knows? You never know what motivates people to sell things twice in a short period of time. I always think that's a risk, but we'll see how it does. And here is the snuff bottle catalog at Christie's. Great snuff bottles. If you're a snuff bottle buyer, collector, dealer, you want to study this. There's some absolutely fabulous pieces in here, and there's a very nice monograph at the beginning that talks about snuff bottle collecting and its history and so forth. And as I mentioned last week, there's a couple of pieces in here from the old Lila Perry collection. If you've been collecting snuff bottles for any length of time, you know who she was. She wrote books. She was a scholar on snuff bottles back in the 60s and I think the 70s. But she had some great things. All right, now let's hop over to this. These are the two Sotheby's catalogs. One of them is important Chinese works of art, and the other one is monochromes. And you may have noticed that the pages, the catalogs display a little funny. It's only because Sotheby's has not published any catalogs for their upcoming sales. I think they may be phasing them out altogether, but they did have a PDF file that we could get a hold of, and we could generate a catalog happily from that for everyone. And if you open up the little box at the bottom, it'll pull up and you can scroll through and look at things in this sale that you want to examine. And then you can always just, you just click the image, it takes you right to the page, close it, and you're there. Okay. It works just like the other catalogs all do. It's just a slightly different format. That's all. But let's get over to it. And this is the two sales we're going to be focusing on: monochromes and important Chinese works of art. And we're going to start with monochromes. We're going to start with the monochrome sale. They had one, as you recall. There was another monochrome sale. This is monochrome 2. They had another one back in July that did very well, and I guess everybody was happy with it. So they're sticking with that format and that description. And here it is. And their images this time around for this sale are absolutely superb. And let's start with this: a fabulous Shang Dynasty ding, three-legged pot, done in the later Shang period. Very, very refined, very elegant. And these were done at a time. Here's a nice shot of it when they created these. Making bronzes was a very complex project back then, and these were all carved. All the relief work you see in this were all carved in the casting, within the casting. all right, in the mold. So they carved the mold, they worked the mold to make it absolutely precise as they could, given, you consider the time period, the Shang period, Shang Dynasty, and they would cast it and pull it out, and that was it. In some other bronzes and other periods, what they would do is they would cast the piece, and then they would cold work it afterwards. Once the piece cooled down, they would go in with tools and sort of work on the relief work, clean it up a little bit to make it a bit more perfect. But at this time, they were able to do very, very precise castings, which held up during the firing process, and you ended up with this, all straight out of the mold. No changes, no alterations by the artists afterwards. And this is a great piece, has absolutely superb color. The color is striking on this, nice and even over the entire body. Beautiful archaic work on the legs and so forth, and then these very, very simple relief turnings at the bottom. A great ritual piece, and it's estimated at 3.5 to 4 million Hong Kong, or roughly $400,000 to $500,000, somewhere in there. As we saw in the last series of sales, the estimates didn't mean a heck of a lot, so they may not this time either. As we saw last time, the best pieces, some of them sold for 5 times estimate, and even more in a couple of cases. All right, and there's a good write-up on the piece down here. It originally had been in the JT Thai collection and was last sold at Sotheby's in on March 22nd, 2011. It was lot number 25. And if you're curious, you can go back and see what it brought. All right, and then pop over here to this. Is an important and very, very rare Huanwali table, a Bangchuao Ming Dynasty table. This particular form is considered to be among the most elegant of the carved Ming tables. It's a really, really beautiful example. And others of these have turned up in the market over the years, but had condition issues. Sometimes these appliques, of these turnings on the bases, on the feet, the cups that went over the feet were damaged or replaced and so forth. This one looks to be in absolutely great condition, and it's a known table. This table had sold back in 2003. It had come out of the collection. If you scroll down, you can find it all here. Here it is, Gangolf Geese, a German collector, and Christie's handled it back in, there it is, 2003 they sold it, and the provenance here should read CL Ma Antiques Hong Kong, the Gangolf Geese collection. There it is. All right, and it was last sold, as I said, 17 or so years ago. It brought, at that time, about $185,000, maybe a little more, and it's estimated at 1.2 to 1.8 million Hong Kong, so it's a slight bump in estimated value from back then. So there's a pretty good chance, because Ming furniture prices have risen quite a bit since then, that this will do quite well. It could bring $500,000 or more pretty readily, I think. All right, but it's a beautiful table nonetheless. And then over to this. I included this Sung piece in here. It's a Song Dynasty incense burner, Southern Sung, because I get, in the inquiry program and the identification assistant program, where people mail in images to us to help them with, to put a date on, I probably see 3 to 5 of these a month, because the copies of these are everywhere. They turn up in auctions all over the United States, and people sometimes pay some fairly serious money for these. All of them are copies, all right? These examples, these original examples, are exceedingly rare. This one's estimated at $1.8 to $2.5 million. They've been popular among collectors outside of China for a very, very long time, over 100, well, way over 100 years. The Japanese have been collecting them longer than that. Many of the many great pieces were sent to Japan for collectors over there. But if you come and look at this, you can get a real look at what a real one should look like. You can study the foot, the color of the paste, the iron coming through in the glaze, and then this very, very soft sort of seafoam green glaze that's just, loaded with bubbles and just absolutely swimming with bubbles, and all the way up the piece. It's a beautiful, beautiful example, evenly done, and the color is completely even. Great color, and the only places you see thin spots are here in the mold where the piece was shaped. You see this ridge underneath of the clay, which has iron content in it, so it pulls through a little bit, and it gives it some definition to the body of the piece. And as I said, it's estimated at $1.8 to $2.5 million, or around 3 to what is that, about 200,000? Yeah, two to 400,000, $200,000 to $300,000, something like that. And it could bring more than that. And has this been on the market lately? No, it hasn't. And it came from the collection of the Bunko Foundation in Tokyo. All right, as I said, a lot of them are in Japanese collections. That's not unusual. They often have those very cool boxes. And then on to this. This is one of the one of the two rarest things in the series of auctions that Sotheby's is doing. Is this absolutely fantastic Hungmu glazed, outer glazed bowl in brown, inner glazed with a cobalt and beautiful interior dragon decoration that we'll get to in a minute. These bowls are fantastically rare. They made a few of them in stem cups. They made a few of them in other bowls. There's a handful of these known in the world. They've discovered them and dated them based on shards found at known Hungwu sites. A shard of one of these was found near the old palace during the early Ming Dynasty, and you can see the outside has this very, very lovely brown glaze that was applied to it, because they didn't really know how to do yellow back then, and the interior is done in blue. And a number of people, Jessica Harrison Hall and others, have speculated that these were for strictly ritual purposes, that the exterior of the bowl was done in brown to simulate the earth, and the blue is for the sky, and that kind of thing. They haven't found anything to confirm that, but there's been a lot of research done on these color combinations to try to ascertain why they were used. And right now, that's I think probably the leading angle on why. And if you flip this bowl over and take a look at the interior of it, you can get a sense of just how well decorated this is. This beautifully done reliefed dragon on the interior. And you'll notice the facial expression of the Hungmu dragons were not terribly like later Ming dragons, which tended to be much more ferocious, the snarling face, and so forth. Some of them are almost cartoonish looking. This one has a very quiet elegance to it, which was interesting because Hungwu was not he wasn't from a wealthy family. He was raised very, very, very poor, and he became the emperor, and he led the country for I think 3 decades. And he didn't grow up around elegant, fancy things, but he apparently had an appreciation for them. And this was done to be reflective of his rule. Quiet elegance, and the way the dragon is done, the running dragon all the way along, the details of the scales on the body are very nice. The proportions of the body are excellent all the way back. You notice the almost pinwheel effect of the claws, just very, very well done all the way through. And how this was done is that it was molded into the piece, and then the glaze would pull back a little, so the highlights would turn sort of white as the glaze pulled back into the body a bit during the firing. And this was a superb example. And the outside of the bowl is Anhua decorated on top of it. We'll try to pull up an image of it. There it is. Here's a picture of the back of the bowl, the bottom, and they provide some really great images of great image of the foot here, so you can get a true sense of what these should look like. Often there are a lot of fakes around of Hungwu and early Ming pieces, as you see. They are not faking this one yet, but if this one brings as much money as it could, you may see copies of this bowl appearing on the market within a matter of months, as we've seen so many times on other pieces that have done extremely well, especially great rarities. People tend to remember them, and they turn up in some rural auction in America within a matter of 3 to 5 months. If you see another one of these again, and it looks like this, run for your life, because it isn't going to be one unless it's in a museum or at a major auction house. Pretty simple. All right, and if you look at the exterior of this, as I said, it's Anhua decorated. It has these nice incise lines done in the body, which are just hinted at. They're hard to see, and they're just sort of supposed to be a little bit of a surprise for the viewer and so forth. And you see these, that you'll notice that in the upper right here, by this pattern you see, this lappet pattern is often seen around the bases of some late Yuan and early Ming pieces. It was carried forward onto this bowl. All right, it is a great bowl, and it's estimated at 8 to 12 million Hong Kong, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that a number devastated. And they do, in the description on the Sotheby site, if you want to go look at it, at the bottom they show a couple of other known examples. One is in the, see, these are both in the British Museum. All right, a blue and white glazed Anhua decorated dragon dish, and a stem cup or an offering cup. And this led them to believe that these were probably done for ritual purposes, earth and sky and so forth. All right, so check that out. That's just an absolutely great bowl. And then over here to the furniture section, this is a stupendous Ming Dynasty bed. Get a better picture of it here. Look at that one up here. Come on. Come on. There it is. Late Ming Dynasty bed. These were made during the period, the absolute peak of Ming furniture production. This one came from that famous collection, the Imperial Chinese Furniture Collection out in California. Classical Chinese Furniture. The Museum of Classical Chinese Furniture, which was shut down and auctioned off in 1996 over some legal and tax issues. It was a shame because they published great books. They did scholarly work on it. But apparently they didn't structure the place the proper way. I'm not sure what the whole story was. I don't remember. I remember it happening, but I don't remember what the reason was. All I know is a lot of great Ming furniture came to the market, and this bed was one of them. It's estimated at 20 to 30 million Hong Kong. This is a known example. They were only in the possession of more or less highly important, mostly imperial people, members of the imperial court, or very, 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 very high-ranking government officials may have owned these, but most of them were in the imperial house. And this is just a stupendous Huanwali example, and you can see by the carving how well it was done in the 16th century. Or the 17th century, 16th century, excuse me, 16th century. And but the vines, everything, and it looks to be in great condition all the way around. There's no, it hasn't been messed with, not broken or damaged or anything like that. And it's interesting. I got to see one of these in Boston many years ago at an exhibition at the Museum of Fine Art in Boston. It was a private collection that was lent to the museum, and I had the opportunity to go in and go through it, and they had one of these beds set up, and there's a catalog published for that collection too. If you want to find it, look it up. You can find it down here. Where's the description here? Hold on for a minute here. It's the connoisseurship of was it Friends of the House or something? I forget. It was the MFA collection of furniture. Anyway, you'll find it. Okay, and now over here, and as I said, it's estimated $20 to $30 million. So roughly $2.5–3 million to $4 million for that bed. And then over here to this, the Narcissus Bowl, Ware, Junyao Lavender Glazed Bowl. These have also been sort of, these have been, if you've been following, any of you have been following this, these have been sort of at the center of a controversy about dating them. For the longest time, these were always thought to be Song Dynasty, Song to early Yuan Dynasty. That was sort of the rule. That's how old they thought they were. And then people really started looking at the dating of them and started looking for evidence or proof that they were that old, because some people began to wonder why was it they were so prevalent in paintings and so forth in the Ming Dynasty, but never in the Song, never in the Yuan, and so forth. And what they found out was that they're pretty certain at this point all of these were made during the Ming Dynasty and not the Song. So if you have a book at home that was published prior to about 2000, it says it's Song or early Yuan. That is a mistake, and they're now correcting all of those old things because they found the shards and they did the research on them. And as I said, there's no written inventories of any of these, which they did do, and none of them are depicted in paintings from the Yuan, the early Yuan, or back to the Song. None were depicted, though other bowls were. And these particular Narcissus bowls were made in a variety of sizes, graduated sizes up to about 9 or 10. They were numbered typically on the back, and they were all done with these beautiful glazes. Some of the glazes were more blue, some of them are a little more red, and so forth. But this is a really great example, beautifully done. It's got this nice sort of brownish celadon foot, and then up into this flambe glazed body with those relief worked brown rebuses running around the outside of it, or you know, the little almost look like rosehead nail tops. Anyway, and here's a good picture of the bottom. If you want to see what the bottom of a real one looks like, this is what it looks like. And the photograph is so sharp you can almost sense what the glaze would feel like if you touched it, which is an important thing to know what these look like. These are, and they're numbered, these are extremely rare, all right? And they make these also by the boatload in copies, and they turn up in auctions all the time around the the world. If you see one, you can rest pretty much assured that it's a fake, unless it's being sold by Sotheby's, Christie's, Bonhams, to John's in Paris. Doyle might get one, that kind of thing. But you're not going to find them at Joe Doak's auction house in Minnesota. All right. Unless it's come out of a collection, and if it does, it's going to get more attention than you could possibly imagine. At any rate, it is estimated at 5 to 7 million Hong Kong. All right, so 450, 500,000 to $700,000 or $800,000. But a beautiful example, nice glaze, and should do pretty well. And then over here to this. This may be one of the best hare's fur bowls in the world. It's been exhibited heavily. It was just sold, I think, a few years ago, as I recall, wasn't it? It was last sold on 2016. Yeah. But this is a famous one, John Silver Street Ngimi Timmoku Tea Bowl. That's a mouthful. And the reason this is so amazing is that it's the only bowl known that has this particular glaze on it. So if you see one, like all the others, you see one at an auction, walk away from it. All right. But they believe this is the only one with this particular glaze. It was this silvery blue that pushes through in these brown areas caused by reactions with the iron in the clay and so forth. And it has a metal rim applied to it. They didn't say that it was silver, and they would have. So I'm assuming it's some sort of tin or some sort of alloy, which they did a lot of back in the day, and these were applied to protect the piece. And this, I believe, is coming out of a Japanese collection or something. But anyway, beautifully glazed. And what they did that was nifty with this is, if you enjoy Timmoku pieces and you like these early Sung pieces, if you come over here, if we can get the picture to load, a little sensitive. There we go. Try it again. There it is. You can blow up the bottom, because we get, as I said, the identification thing, we get these sent to us all the time, and rarely are they authentic. This is what the bottom of a good one of these should look like. You have that very nice, that sort of slightly rough texture, but very well potted of the clay itself, and then this sort of rolled, somewhat thick foot rim that turns black or gray in the firing, the paste, and then slightly recessed, and this beautiful, beautiful edge where the glaze, it almost looks like it's still in liquid form, flowed down and just stopped, and then it was baked into the piece. And as I said, it looks like it's almost still liquid, especially over here where the pointer is, right in here. A beautiful example, and extremely rare, and estimated at 12 to 16 million Hong Kong, or 1.5 to around $2 million. We'll see how that does. It may do a little bit better. I just love that thing. Look at that. God, what a great photograph. The photography has gotten so good. It's fabulous. And you can go down here and read about the provenance. It was in a collection up until 1959. It was sold at Sotheby's in 59. It was in the hands of Blewitts, who not unsurprisingly had it in their inventory. And then it went to the collection of Roger Pilkington, who was, as many of you know, was a famous collector. And it was sold in Hong Kong on April 6th of 2016. All right. So I think it seems like Sotheby's must have gone around and really shook the trees with their buyers to get some lots for this sale. They got some good ones. And then over here to this really, really fine celadon glaze. It has a bluish glaze to it, but it's a celadon glaze Yongshen mark and period jar. It measures about 10 inches tall. And it's interesting because these pieces, this particular blue, we can get it to stay. There it is. This particular tone of blue is sort of, the refining of it began during the Kangxi period, when they began finding ways to refine the glaze more effectively to get the iron out of it, so you didn't get those deep greens and heavy greens that you see on typical celadons from the Long Quan kilns. And they were able to reduce the iron content heavily in the glaze and in the pastes, and they ended up with these very, very beautiful, sort of on the way to Clair de Lune green celadons. And the shape of this is just, simple, elegant, superb, very much in the Shang Dynasty taste, all the way down. You notice the glaze is absolutely even and stops just perfectly just above that foot rim. Just absolutely perfect. And this is a very rare example. Obviously, it is mark and period. There's the mark. Get the mark to show up. There it is. All right, and you can pull in the mark and get a good look at it. And what's interesting about some of the marks they're doing lately, and it's going to be helpful, and we'll look at a couple of others, is that they've done such a great job at giving you enlargements of the marks on Chinese porcelain that you can actually see the bubbles in the glaze. And one of the things that bubbles will tell you is that on the fakes, the bubbles tend to be excessively thick over the mark, and they tend to be much too controlled and more or less often all of the same size. And genuine bubbles on slightly thick glazes tend to be highly irregular if you look at them under magnification, and they ranging from different depths under the glaze. And you can see that in this example. If you study it very carefully, you'll see what I'm talking about. You notice there's some areas that blotch a little bit more, and that's because the bubbles and whatnot were thicker and so forth. But the mark on this is just perfectly well done. It's estimated at 1.5 to 2 million Hong Kong, or roughly what 800,000 to $1.5 million US. But a great looking vase, and this is all in the same sale. It just goes on and on and on. There's about 120 lots on the sale. This is just a few of the pieces. And then on to this fantastic, I mentioned this piece last week, this fantastic Yongshen celadon ewer, and clearly based on a Middle Eastern form, metal form that was these were done, exchanged back and forth culturally between China and the Middle East. And during the Ming Dynasty, it started then, and sort of the late Yuan Dynasty, they copied into porcelain Ming Middle Eastern metal forms into the ceramics. And this is clearly based on one. They actually provide an image down below that we'll take a look at in a minute. And what's nice about this is it has the same lappet or chrysanthemum lappets around the bottoms and facing downward on the top here that you saw on peach bloom pieces of the Kangxi period. All right, that pattern was popular. It was elegant, framed things nicely, and they used it. In the midsection of this is Anhua decorated, hidden decoration, again, of vines going around the middle. And they become very obvious because they're carved into the body. That carving fills up with glaze and gives it a good outline so you can see it. It's very elegant. And then up over the body, these sort of, these rings, these things here. You saw these also on peach bloom pieces. They call them string vases when you see this. But these sort of turnings around the neck and around the shoulder, and then up this nice little almost garlic neck decoration. And underneath the glaze, if you look very carefully, you'll see acanthus leaves going up or bok choy leaves going up the body, and then ending with that beautifully done delicate thinly potted spout. It's a really great thing. And if you look at these carefully, so you look at them at a glance, you go, oh, it's a big green thing. But when you look at them carefully and really examine them, you begin to realize how superbly well made these Yongshen examples were. Just absolutely fabulous. And these were not terribly big. I forget, this one is 9 inches tall. They look big, but they're not. And if you scroll down the page, if you take the time to come here, you can see the Ming example here in blue and white with a handle that was based off of one of these. This is one of the Middle East, and this is from Khorasan brass ewer from Afghanistan. Similar forms were also found in Persia, of course. But here's a very nice one, and they believe that this, of course, is where they got the general style from, but they refined it a bit more. All right, and similar to this vase, similar examples to this vase can also be found. I think the San Francisco Art Museum has one from the Brundage collection and some other places, but great looking thing, great. And then moseying on over to here, the Western Han Dynasty cup. This kind of looks kind of big in the pictures. It's really only a little over 4 inches tall, beautifully done, but very rare. Cups from the Han Dynasty carved in jade are awfully rare because they tended to break. And this one has this nice, I love the different color of the foot, the base, how it's that deep green nephrite, and then crawling up the body, and then this archaistic pattern running around the outside, just like you see on bronzes, with this mythical bird in the middle, and then up, and then the border with ruby heads and this very nicely done rim. And as I said, this is only 4 inches tall. These are very, very small, but a fantastically rare example. And it's estimated at 5 to 8 million Hong Kong, or that comes out to what, about $700,000 to $900,000 roughly. roughly. Again, as I said, estimates, don't worry about them too much. And then moving over here to this Yonglo soft seafoam green, almost a celadon green covered box. On these, they had sort of soft green glazes. Sometimes they'd put just a drop or a slight hint of blue into it somehow to make this blue come out a little bit. But it has a beautiful crackle pattern that's highly defined, very subtle, very subdued into the body. They didn't highlight the piece or rub it down with black ink the way they did in the Song Dynasty with some pieces, so when the piece cooled, it would have these nice black outlines in the crackle. They didn't do that here. They just kept it simple and elegant with this very, very lovely lid applied to the top, the original lid. Highly rare, and these again are not terribly big either. These are just 4 inches in height, very small. But what they did do in this catalog, in this page, was that they provided a fantastic picture of the bottom. And because you do see copies of these periodically, they haven't taken to mass producing copies of these yet because these are actually a little bit tricky to make. But if you notice the foot rim, and it's got that very nice, fairly obvious, natural looking iron oxide line on the inside and the outside of the foot. All right, and the paste is very well levigated. You notice it's white. It's quite free of iron inclusions, because if this thing had a lot of iron still in the paste, it would be pulling through in the glaze, and you'd have problems. All right, and they were able to in this example use very, very highly refined clay, so you ended up with a pure looking body, and it is estimated at 10 to 15 million Hong Kong dollars, or what does that come out to roughly? About 1.5 to 1.8 million in the West. All right, and now let's take a look over at the important Chinese works of art. That was the monochrome sale. This is important Chinese works of art, and at the front end of the sale, they have a slew of there's I think 7 or 8 or 9 really great blue and white pieces, Ming and Qing. All right, and this is one of them. This is an absolutely powerhouse of a vase made during the Qianlong period, Marcan period, of course. And this thing is pretty big, as I recall. Yeah, 14 inches, nice size. It's not 5 or 6 inches. And if you blow up the image over here and get into it, you'll get a sense of just how superbly decorated this is. I believe all these came out of one collection because there's a flavor of just superb potting and superb painting in all of them. They're all absolutely great. And if you look at this, you have this heaping and piling effect that was carried forward and reintroduced from the Ming Dynasty, but beautiful spacing, beautifully done with the flowers, and then these delicate sort of hanging roux heads around the upper edge, and then elephants, of course, which are very popular in the Qianlong court, because they actually used elephants in the court, for important holidays, for processions and so forth, and they were applied onto porcelains, and this form, of course, is based off of off of an early bronze form. All right, and then at the top you have that. A great example, and again, they provided a good picture of the Ming mark on the bottom. The Qianlong mark on the bottom. It has a $2 to $3 million Hong Kong estimate. Let me see if we can pop into this mark for a second. Come on. Can't get the mark to hop open. Anyway, take a look at that mark when you have it. There it is. All right, and this is what I was talking about before about the marks and the bubbles in the glaze. This is the one that had particularly good photographs. You'll notice if you look at this photograph carefully, and you want to study marks and study bubbles, take a look at this. This thing has lots of bubbles. Lots and lots and lots of bubbles in the glaze. But what you'll notice is that they're all irregular. They're all bubbles, but they're all irregular. There's no uniform sheen or look to them. They're all of different sizes, different shapes, and especially up here on the upper right, when you look in here, you can really see it. You see big bubbles, little bubbles, and all that. And bubbles aren't the only thing to look at, but they can be pretty handy. They can save you from spending money if you're looking at a piece that has perfectly even bubble patterns on the bottom. It's not the only thing, but it's certainly part of it. All right, and as I said, 2 to 3 million Hong Kong. And we'll see how that goes. And then over here to this I mentioned last week. This is one of my favorite things in the whole sale. I just absolutely love this vase. it's the Seven Sages. It's a story that goes back to the Wei Dynasty about the sages giving up their positions in the government because of corruption, and they went off on their own and formed their own culture and all that. But if you look at this drawing, it is almost impossible to believe they did it this way. The details of the faces, the crispness of the faces, the facial expressions of the little boy leaning over the go board, the use of underglazed blue with all this absolutely superb shading, and the introduction of underglazed red. Underglazed red and underglazed blue, when used in combination back then, was very, very tricky stuff. The red tended to run, it tended to burn, it tended to turn green, caused all kinds of problems because it reacted differently in the kiln than cobalt did. And they had to have fantastically well-controlled kilns to do this, and how they cooled the kiln and how they applied oxygen into the kiln and so forth. You notice that in the foreground here they have this very nice little cup, and then the head, the scarf on the man's head with the clouds, and I just love this kid, the way his little boy's face. And then over here you notice that even in this little vase, the plant coming out of it, they added red berries onto the plant, red fruit. All right, this is just an absolutely superb example, and the estimate to me seems low. It may be because it's lower because it's an 18th century piece. It is not marked, so it may be low. It's estimated at $800,000 to $1 million, which seems almost reasonable to me. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if it brought a lot more than that. But a great example, and it is pretty big, 18 inches tall. So this is a very good sized pot. In the description, they actually said it was emulating or based on the shape of a Rulu vase from the Kangxi period, and then heavily rounded out. That was how they described it, because I don't think they could figure out what the form. But also here at the top, the iron red around the top here, this very delicate diaper pattern that was popular in the Qianlong period. They applied it here just sort of to break the piece up. And you can't get away with how well that is done and how sharply everything is painted. If you look at the bamboo leaves, there's no bleeding. Absolute precision in the decorating of this piece. Absolutely precise. $800,000 to $1 million, or $1 million Hong Kong. So what does that come out to? That comes out to around $100 to $120,000. I don't know why. I'd be surprised if that didn't bring a lot more than that. And then over here to this really fine Qianlong Marken period Meiping vase, but decorated, this heaping and piling effect from the Ming Dynasty again. And they made these forms in the Ming Dynasty, except that the drawing wasn't this tight. It tended to be much more loose, much more fluid, much more open. We're going to see a Yonglo piece in a minute that was decorated considerably differently. It's a Yu Chu Ping, but the decoration is what you want to pay attention to. But during the Qianlong period, they really refined and tightened up the painting, as we just saw in that previous example with the sages. You can see it here too. Beautifully done clusters of peaches and so forth, up, and this very refined, not too glossy, white glaze, but beautifully white, and then up to the mouth, and then around the neck, of course, are these superb lappets coming off of it. It is Marken period. They provided lots of good pictures for it, though. If you want to take a look at the top, there are the lappets running around the top, and you see these same lappets running around on Qianlong moon flasks. You'll see them radiating from the center in a larger scale, and here they are used again around the top of the vase. All right, and as I said, it's a good one. It's estimated at 6 to 8 million Hong Kong, or $800,000 to $1 million US, roughly. All right. And then over here, this is the Ming example, okay, the Yuhu Chu Ping Chenhua period. It is not marked, but this is a Ming Dynasty example, and you can see how the drawing was looser. You still have some of that heaping and piling effect, but it was looser, not quite as tight, because this was how they did them. And I think some of it was they couldn't do the really tight decorating that they could during the Yongshen and the Qianlong period. But the fluidity of the painting is quite charming. Good use of negative space in the background. Love the lotuses, and it's perfectly potted. The potting on this vase is absolutely great. And again, up around the neck, as you saw in that last vase, it had the acanthus leaves around that early monochrome. Here you again seeing them being used in a much earlier example around the neck of this Yu Chu Ping, and going down, and then this nicely stepped out foot afterwards. And if you bring this up. Here's the foot rim to this. The bottom, you can go around and get a good look at it. Notice, again, early Ming porcelain, how nicely they were able to clean up the clay. You don't see a lot of iron spots on the bottom, nice and white, slightly ivory, but very pure. And this way, they didn't get discoloration in the body when they fired it and glazed it. You don't get black spots. It was just beautifully done. And notice how nicely shaped the inside of this foot is. They sort of stepped it down, tidily glazed it, very technically proficient for so early on. You have to realize at this time in Europe, they didn't know how to make porcelain. They didn't know how to make porcelain in Japan yet. So the Chinese were so far ahead in that time. And then on to this. One of the great rarities in the sale is this absolutely superb Bodhisattva from the Song Dynasty. There's only one other known of this type. As far as anybody knows on this. And this is pretty good size. I think it's around 24 inches tall. It's pretty big. But the style of this Bodhisattva in gilt bronze is absolutely amazing. And this was done in the Song, and one of the reasons they know it is, one, they have drawings and so forth of the face that was done like this. But during the Song and after the Song Dynasty, the Bodhisattva, the Kuan Yin, was often featured more as a female deity, much more feminine. In this one, clearly there is a mustache and a beard prior to that. And they have found paintings from the Tang Dynasty onward that also depict the face in this manner with whiskers. But what's amazing about this is that they didn't do Buddha bronzes of this type gilt. Most of them were done in wood, in stone, and other things. And early gilt bronzes of Bodhisattvas are unbelievably rare. And this one is very quirky. They've added all kinds of interesting elements onto it. It is enormous. The casting quality is superb. When you look at this work on here, the crispness of the casting, the gilt is, the edges, the precision, the smooth areas are beautifully smooth. The relief areas are beautifully finished with the necklace all the way down around the waist, and then all the incise decoration into the fabric. Let's get it back up here. There it is. All that incise decoration into the fabric. Absolutely stupendous. This has an enormous estimate. As I said, 20 to 30 million Hong Kong. I wouldn't be surprised if this went through that. It's very big. It's 2 feet tall. And the quality of the casting is just sumptuous. Just sumptuous as all get out and in beautiful condition. All right. And what else is on here? That's it. There's a good write. Oh, there's a good write-up here at the bottom by Regina Crowell, but there has no provenance. So it's been obviously in a private collection for a very, very long time, because no museum would ever sell this that I can think of, because it would be the best bronze in their collection. And we'll see how this one goes. They estimate 20 to 30 million Hong Kong, which comes out to around, 2.8 to 4 million, $3.8 million US. And as we saw a couple weeks ago, some of the pieces that were in New York blew through those kinds of numbers. So we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised to see it bring $4 or $5 million. Just a great thing. And then over here to this is also one of the great known rarities in this sale. It's a very, very fine Yongshen Marken period peach bowl. What's unusual about this bowl are a couple of things that make it stand out from other examples. And there aren't that many other examples. There's a few dozen maybe in the world that I'm aware of. But what's unusual about this is that most of those other peach bowls have 4 or 6 peaches on them. This one has 5. It also has just 5 bats. And in the interior, the bats are flying upside down, which is kind of cool. They're heading down. All auspicious symbols for prosperity and good fortune going ahead, and happiness and peace. All the best wishes, basically. But what's really interesting about this peach bowl is that the peaches are not outlined. Typically on peach bowls, you see an outline, a black outline or a grayish outline or some sort of color for what the artist could paint within to keep the shape. These peaches have no outlines, which is a very, very rare feature that may drive the price heavily. They're just free-handed onto the piece. They did outline the leaves that overlapped them, so they wouldn't bleed on probably a little bit just to help the artist. But the peaches themselves were not. And that is an absolute rare thing. And then you have auspicious bats flying around it. So you have 5 peaches, 5 bats, and there are no peaches on the interior. The interior is free of peaches, just bats and flowers around the interior. And here you have them. All right. And again, beautifully enameled, beautiful famille rose enameling. And notice the soft in the reflection. You can really see the softness of the glaze. This very, very soft glaze, not too thick, because they don't want to. They want you to see the colors and feel what it looked like. It's estimated at 25 to 35 million Hong Kong, or roughly $4 to $5 million. But unbelievably rare object, and there's a good write-up on it as well. And it came from the Edward Chow collection, and it was sold in 1980 the last time around. The Edward T. Chow collection was one of the greatest Chinese porcelain collections, art collections ever auctioned. It was done in most of it was done in a 3-volume set, early ceramics and art, and then later, and then another one on jades or something. But at any rate, this is a great piece, and it was published in Michel Berthelet's book La Céramique Chinoise in 1974. Julian Tonson talked about this bowl and so forth, and there is again another good write-up at the bottom. And now moseying over to one of the last lots, just because I loved these. I threw these in. I threw them in. They're estimated at 2.5 to 3.5 million Hong Kong. But a really, really attractive pair of imperial carved wooden polychrome gilt lacquer dragon panels, Qianlong period. They're not marked or anything, but they were nice size. What were they? They were 45 by 49 inches. Remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about hanging big panels? They did big panels in these too. These were huge. These are huge, but the dragons are just incredibly well done. The dragons, and then the red lacquered bodies. Do they have a better picture of these? Yeah, they do. Here, come on. There it is. There. You can see the lacquer work, and the gold lacquer work waves on the ground, and then the wood going over it. And from a distance, when you first look at these, they don't look like much, but then when you take a moment to come in and really look at them, you see just how absolutely superb this lacquer and carving work is. Just stupendous quality. The scales and the dragon especially, and then the waves, the thousands and thousands of waves in this picture with thousands and thousands of carving lines, all perfectly done. And notice the styling of the dragon, very typical of the Qing Dynasty, especially in the 18th century. Very, very different than the look of early Ming dragons, for example, because that style did change over time. But what a great piece, at any rate. That's it. And then we'll get back and we'll do a wind down and sort of look through the prices once this is over. And if you enjoy our videos, please subscribe here to us on YouTube. Visit us at bidamount.com, and have a wonderful week. Give us a thumbs up and leave a comment. If there's something else, other things you'd like to see in these videos, let me know, because we do keep a list, and I think we've done a pretty good job at keeping up with things that people have suggested, because it's all interesting to me. I'll talk about all of it. So let me know your thoughts, and if I think we can do it, we'll do it. And have a wonderful week, and we'll be back on Friday, and we'll do another video, of course, once this is over, and see how the prices were and get a sense of the market. But no matter how the market does, all of these things are fabulous and should be enjoyed for that. Okay. See you all next time. Bye-bye.